Chris Yandick, CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world. Today we welcome back international artist based here in Las Vegas, Johnathan Schultz, who is here to talk about the latest news in his continuing upward career. Johnathan, thanks so much for being back with us on CYInterview today. How are you, sir?
Hey, fantastic. And you? Thanks for having me back.
And also here today, who just came off a fantastic webinar, CYInterview sponsor, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC, Mr. Rob Gill. Rob, congratulations on your webinar this week, and thanks as always for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for supporting it, brother, and thank you for supporting the book that's coming out and everything else.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. But Johnathan, we really didn't get to start, and just to give a little bit of a backstory, we didn't really get to talk about this in the first CYInterview. So how long, just to begin, have you been an artist? When did this begin for you?
So art began as a child for me, and I actually used to sell 3D pop art cards, like gift cards, as a kid for pocket money. So, it goes all the way back to my childhood, but I'd say within the last 7 years, that's when I really started embracing it and, just throwing myself full time into the art space and, really trying to get my artwork out there.
So just to explain, Rob, to just give you kind of a backstory, he just literally had one of his paintings go to Sotheby's auction house, and it literally went for 5 figures.
Wow.
So,
congratulations.
So Johnathan, tell me, what was that experience like? I mean, the reality of what it comes down to is that I guess you were trying to tell me when we were at your event back in February with that former NFL star Rashard Jennings, is this is more of a new thing for you, but it's like you're going from 0 to 100 now. So what does that feel like?
It's sometimes surreal. I mean, looking at the Sotheby's auction, that was something amazing. It came by almost by chance that I was able to be a part of it, but when they saw what it was, Sotheby's embraced it as well. So taking a look at that there, it puts me in a different position where I know that there's extra collectors because I don't know who bought that piece. That I think that in itself is more exciting as well. There's individuals out there that are looking to me for what I'm producing and what I have produced that I don't even know about, and that are there to support as well.
So let me just say this to you, Rob, just to bring it upwards. What do you feel like when you hear that somebody has passion about something, but now they're really applying themselves, and then you are literally, your work goes to an auction house and people are bidding a bidding war of your auction. What does it feel like, in your opinion, to go from 0 to 100? Nothing's happening and then everything happens at once.
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. And Johnathan, congratulations. I don't think, though, there's an overnight success. Personally, I think that, when we tell a story, although it happened, that piece of Johnathan's story happened overnight, but it's probably a lifelong journey that led to that moment, in my opinion, at least, from other different relationships. We call that, not only proximity, right, but human capital, right, is just as important as human financial resources. So I feel that without knowing anything and just jumping into this wonderful webinar that we're having right now, or a Zoom call interview, that to hear about, wow, a painting was sold for 5 figures, that's amazing. He doesn't know who did it. That's amazing. Does that mean that whoever that person that bought it would reach out to him and have him do more paintings, or set up another auction just for him? These are some of the thoughts that go on in my entrepreneurial head. And what does that look like with his relationship with Sotheby and all these other things? And is the painting replicable? Can it be sold to other people? That's where my brain takes me. And I think entrepreneurship is what really changes the trajectory of economies. And that sounds amazing. And congratulations, really. Truly
Johnathan, any thoughts to Rob's comments?
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head with, a lifelong span. If it wasn't for me every day doing what I do, and the experiences, putting myself out there. I mean, Chris, you were able to see the event that I hosted, but I also go to multiple events, co-host, etc. So I think it's important what you said there, Rob, to you have to put yourself out there. You have to be in those situations. You have to be creating all the time. Otherwise, this would never be able to be there.
Yes. Amazing.
Rob, you often talk about something called ecosystem mergers. What do you think the tying is between people who are significant art buyers in the financial world?
Well, the tie, if you're an art buyer, you're looking for, obviously you have a passion for art, but also you're looking for tax strategies, right? You're also looking for alternative investments. You're looking for the ability to put money in a place that's hard to get from a tax standpoint. And maybe it's about family legacy and sending it down and all that passion that's tied to it. But there is real value in collectibles, obviously. And I'm sure Johnathan knows that. I don't think if somebody wants to spend 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even $90,000, unless they truly like what they're putting their money into, no matter what they're worth, unless it's like just trying to get it done all in one day, of course. But I think that, from what we're describing here is ecosystem merger. I'll go right into that right now. And that's two different communities coming together for the benefit of each community's betterment to understand how to not only manage money, if it would be me and Johnathan in this situation, but also to be able to get a collectible that could really create a maybe 3-4 digit rate of return over somebody's life, right? So that there's a lot of scarcity, I would assume, in Jonathan's paintings, and when you have scarcity, that creates urgency. When you have urgency, that creates an increase in price demand.
Well, interesting enough, Rob, some of Jonathan's work uses gold, silver, precious metals. Johnathan, talk a little bit about that.
I think that comes from my roots. I'm originally from South Africa, and I enjoy working with different, I guess, mediums that push boundaries. And so working with gold, trying to get it to shine in a specific way, or, specific textures on a canvas, I love, the challenge with all of that. And so because of that type of effect that it brings, it just makes me want to do more and work more with those type of materials.
Who are some artists that are inspiring you, Johnathan, or have inspired you to get to your point in your career?
I think there's actually quite a few artists. Some of the I think if you take a look at Andy Warhol, some of his paintings were very, it's actually not even paintings, it's like lithographs and, just kind of prints in simple terms. And how that there is, it's so, like, it's not, I think simple is a terrible word to use for it, but it's simple yet unique, and it's powerful at the same time, almost like less is more. And so I love learning from that. Like, how do you create something that can speak to lots of people, but in almost like as least of a technical way as possible. So it's very, I love how he was able to do that. So that type of inspiration is what I use, and it's almost like I reversed engineered some of the techniques that I use by bringing in the precious metals with the paint, and even using pencil in some of my pieces. So that big kind of brings me a lot back to how did Andy Warhol do what he did. I love the Renaissance artists, from Michelangelo to all of them, where they worked on multiple pieces, from some of them working on sculptures to paintings to designs for different machinery and things like that. So it's really inspiring to see how diverse a lot of those artists are as well, or were. And I like adapting that.
Yeah.
Rob, what part of success is value-based, and what part is the marketing of that value, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I want to just say two comments. When
Sure.
Johnathan spoke, and I'll go to that question in a second. When Johnathan
Sure.
spoke about coming up in South Africa and the gold, it made me think of the late great Iceberg Slim, where he said the gold is for the honey and the green is for the money. And then when he talked about his recent stylistic approach to the painting, where he was able to take other painters and his own process and then create something brand new. It reminds me of the great coach Bob Hurley Sr., who's Danny Hurley's dad, where he would have a whole season go by and then go to his playbook from 5-10 years before that and bring those plays in just during tournament time when the other team couldn't prepare for it. And I think that's what innovation is. Now, when we talk about value is tied to your belief system. Your belief system is really what is your core on what your why is. If your why doesn't make you cry, then you have to find a different why. Because I think if you have a deep-rooted why, it's going to give you that juice that you need every single day to show up with the proper mindset to be able to excel in anything you want to do. Now, with that, though, if you want to monetize, then the marketing must come in, right? With integrity, of course. And I think the maneuvers that he's discussing right now, where he was able to add something into what was already there, created something brand new, but it was just a different mix of ingredients, and that's where the marketing kicked in over time. Plus, along the way, he probably got to know the right people that put him in the right position to make the right decisions to create the right success track.
Johnathan, thoughts?
Definitely. I think you have to be unique. I mean, yesterday I met with someone from a very prestigious gallery, and while we were talking, he was like, "You know what? You're actually unique. You're the gold guy." And straight up, like that came out because of my work, and so I couldn't agree more with that. It's the marketing. When you have something unique, that people start to know you by that. I mean, if you take a look, Damien Hirst, the shark in the formaldehyde. There's different artists that are known for different pieces, sometimes even just one piece, but it's because of how different it was or what made that unique.
Rob, so at this point, I want to tell you, Johnathan, so speaking about works of art, Johnathan, Rob has a book coming out called Surviving Success. Rob, tell Johnathan about your upcoming book.
Surviving Success. Thank you, Chris. It's really my life's journey on how I was brought up in a middle-class environment in an urban city in New Jersey, 75,000 people, 3 miles, and everybody knew each other's business. And, the schoolyard was a war zone pretty much. And I don't mean with guns, but definitely a lot of fights and a lot of mocking and stuff like that. And during this time, my dad was a police officer, it's always a challenge in the neighborhood that I was brought up in because, the police seem to always be the enemy, right? From certain points of view, of course. And so dealing with that, being the youngest of 4, and the one thing I was able to kind of gravitate towards was the game of basketball. So basketball in life taught me everything I needed to know about business later on, but it also taught me a social pecking order. Along the way, though, I became addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I got sober when I was 26 years old. And when I got sober, I was able to climb a financial wall of success, but I wasn't at that point dealing with all of the wealth mindset wounds that I had from my first 20 years that were handed down to me from my environment and my family. So as a result of it, when I went from making $38,000 to over 7 figures a year, I wasn't emotionally able to handle it. I'm making $1 million too, and all of a sudden $100,000 a month, and I'm buying boxing promotional companies with some well-known figures here in New Jersey. And I'm still sober, but I'm removing my daily work ethic that had grown my business to that point. So surviving success, if you think of a mountain, climbing the mountain, right? When your success became, and for me, it was not overnight. It took a long time, but I wasn't emotionally able to handle it. And there's a lot of folks out there that get money from an inheritance, or, maybe they go from making 100 to 600 grand, but they didn't deal with their wealth wounds because money on its own is what it is, but it's an intoxication if it's mixed with the wrong kind of person, right? So either money makes you more of who you are, good, bad, or challenging, in ways of egotism and other things. And if there's not an understanding of how to deploy capital properly on a monthly basis, yearly basis, to be able to integrate, coordinate each and every dollar, while at the same time not saying to yourself, hey, I want to make $1 million this year, but hey, I want to make $1 million this year so I can help train not only people in my industry, but educate the public on financial freedom. Because if I could do it, you could do it. There's a different mindset. There's a different empowering question that leads to much different results as time goes on. And that book is about that journey. Even as I finished up the final chapters, I had a business challenge that came seemingly out of nowhere. I was able to handle it much differently than other challenges from 10, 15 years before. And the book really documents that journey. And it's really about hope and inspiration for anybody to really invest in the real estate between their ears, right? Your brain, and be able to deploy capital the right way and know that if it is to be, it's up to me. And you don't need to be worth $1 million, $5 or $10 million to work with a team that can really help you get to where you need to be.
Very insightful, Rob. Thank you as always. I have heard so many great descriptions about surviving success over the last few months. That was phenomenal. That's at the top. That's at the top of the ladder, Rob. Seriously, phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Johnathan, I want to talk with you about your other exciting news, Rob. Listen, Rob, he's about to move to the Arts District in downtown Las Vegas with an 11,000 square foot art studio. He's going to be in the thick of things in the art community here in Las Vegas. Johnathan, tell me about that.
Yeah. So, no, firstly, Rob, I definitely want to read that book, and I know some individuals that need to read it as well. I think it's something important for everyone. Actually, it's a lot of people, like you said, when they come into when there's extra funds like that, sometimes they kind of fall short of the vision.
Yeah.
Chris, coming back to the Arts District, this is something I'm really excited for. It's I think being in Vegas already for 4 years has been a whole learning experience, but now throwing myself literally into the thick of it, I think that's where I'm starting to look at the space differently as well, to where I was originally to what I want to build over here. And part of the space is I want to make it an experience. So anyone that comes in there, they may not remember what they see in that, but they'll never forget where they were. I think that's the type of thing that I really want to bring in, and have that everyone wants to come to that space, to experience it. Obviously, it's art focused and around my work and how I do things and what I do, and then bringing in some of the fun aspects. I mean, we're still working on it with the team, like what all to do. There's a big fun thing that you saw at my existing studio was throwing the football with paint on it at a canvas, and at the end of it, seeing what that looks like, and things like that. It brings people in. They're able to explore their creativity as well, and at the same time educate and enjoy what we have to offer in there.
So just to back up a little bit, Rob, so leading up to the Super Bowl back in February, there were a bunch of different VIP parties and events, and Johnathan had one with former NFL star Rashard Jennings, and they both came on before the event here on CYInterview to promote it, and I went to the event, and it was just an amazing night. And Rashard, actually, they put a different colors of paint in a bucket, and they literally threw it at a canvas. I'll send you the video, but it was a great night of people coming together and a chance to display and see Johnathan's art. And aside from that, Rob, Johnathan, why don't you tell us about some of your connections to Nelson Mandela, because some of his work actually has connections to Nelson Mandela, the former South African president.
That's amazing.
So obviously being in South Africa, you get to know people, and I grew up through the transition period when Nelson became president. I got to experience that, and I never actually met I never met Nelson himself, but later on in my years, I finally got to meet one of his grandsons. And when he came to America, we visited. When I went back to South Africa, we visited. It was just such a nice relationship. And I guess after COVID, we haven't been able to meet up again. But when that happens, we definitely will. And that relationship went a lot further than what we expected. And I think there was a lot of, me asking Zondwa Mandela a lot of questions like, hey, where did this happen? What happened? Yeah, what were their thoughts about this? Hearing stories of, not just the good times, but also like where their family home got like raided, and the grandmother telling Zondwa go hide over here, and a lot of personal experiences. And since then I've got to the opportunities to talk to House of Mandela, which is run by Nelson's oldest living daughter, Maki Mandela. And so there's been a lot of development and discussions around my pieces, connected to inspiration that I draw from Nelson and those political prisoners. And it's because of what I've created that has also brought that interest from the family and opened those opportunities to discuss.
And just to break it down, Rob, to understand this, one of Johnathan's work actually has, I believe, a piece of a glass window from the boarding school that Nelson Mandela went to as a kid. Is that correct, Johnathan?
Yeah. So I sent someone on a proper hunt, and the significance of this window is it's from the area where Nelson almost like took that step up and grew. That's where he went from, like the boarding school to Johannesburg. Like it's where life really started happening, and a lot of his story begins, and that transition period. So that piece specifically, I used that window in one of my significant pieces, which I've got in my personal collection, and it represents my step in the next chapter in my life. And so I felt it very crucial, and a big part of my story, like Nelson had his story.
Rob, questions, lots of thoughts, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like whatever the his intimate conversations with Nelson's grandchild versus what's ever been written, you always get a different perspective, right? Like you can really go behind the scenes even deeper. That's my thought. Like, he heard some stories that maybe no one else really hears about. And obviously it's really cool to be able to have something where Nelson was a part of at a younger age in his life and have that in your family now for forever. I think that's,
Well, there's one more piece, Rob, that we haven't talked about, which we're going to talk about right now, that you're going to be blown away by. So when we went to this event prior to the Super Bowl at his art studio, when Rashard Jennings was there, the former NFL star, actually, Johnathan was able to get part of the fence from Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela, of course, was incarcerated, if you can believe it. And he has that now in America, here at his art studio in Las Vegas. Johnathan, talk about how that happened.
That's like a long story, but to kind of condense it, it took months and months of research, and it started off with a friend of mine that actually introduced me originally to Zondwa, who said, hey, take a look at the small piece of fence that I've got. It comes from Robben Island. It comes with a lock on it that's linked to a certificate. And I then was able to track down more of the fence, which I acquired. And then I started looking for where it really came from and who was in charge of all of that. And so I was able to find them and get a lot more of the fence in bigger pieces. So the type of pieces that we now have are like, it's a couple feet by 3-4 feet and things like that. So it's a lot more fence than just these tiny pieces. And what I've been able to do with that is not just display tiny pieces, I've been able to create like a big 10-foot by 10-foot chandelier,
Yeah.
5 rings, and put that together. So I've been able to do a lot more with the bigger pieces, which have, it's a huge impact when you see this huge piece in front of you. It's, you're looking at something that those prisoners looked at every day.
Yeah.
And you get to experience a bit of what they experience. And I think that's a lot of what art is about, is bringing that awareness, telling that story and that experience of dealing with those emotions.
Next time you're in Vegas, Rob, hopefully Jonathan's new art studio will be ready to go and we'll be able to take you over. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no. A question, Jonathan, and not to get specific, but do people actually reach out to you to see if they could buy that from you? I'm just curious.
There's been a few people that have inquired.
Yeah.
I've had it was from the Netherlands where we've had that type of inquiry already.
It's amazing. And Chris, I'm going to give you my link for my first 100 pre-order books.
Yeah, sure.
Feel free to pass it on to Jonathan.
We sure absolutely will. We sure absolutely will. Rob, do you have any questions in closing?
No, thank you, Jonathan, for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. An amazing story, and I wish you continued success.
Absolutely. So we're going to leave it there. Jonathan, I can't wait for your new art studio. Can't wait to come over. He's going to hold all these great events, Rob, next time you're in Vegas. Hopefully it'll be ready to go and we'll take you over. Jonathan is I just want to tell you, Rob, he is one of the rising stars in this city, but more than anything else, he is just such a nice, humble guy, Rob. You will just love Jonathan. He is just so interesting, fun, and just so everyday. Jonathan is just a class act in every way, like you, Rob.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Yep.
And look forward to meeting you in person, Rob.
You too, Jonathan.
Okay, so we're going to leave it there. So for international artist Johnathan Schultz and CYInterview sponsor Rob Gill, thank you both for being on CYInterview. And of course, if you like this video, please subscribe to keep following everything on CYInterview. Thank you both, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.